Good evening. How are you? Well, it's in the low 70s, and that's kind of a surprise. Next thing I know, it'll be 32 degrees when we'll be talking about the cold. Um, the recovery from Holly's double lung transplant involves people saying things to you like, John, you got to take care of yourself. And you say reassuringly, yeah, no, I got it. But the truth is that you really don't, because let's face it, whether it's your child, your wife, you throw yourself into it, and then you do without sleep, you skip doing things you do that keeps you fit. Now, this is brought to my attention because Holly obviously had it much worse. Not only did she have an operation, I always compare these things to you get knocked out so people can beat you up while you're unconscious, so that when you wake up again, you're in better health, although you sure don't feel like that. But the additional thing for anybody is if you're dormant for an extended period of time, and in Holly's case, we're talking about being bedridden, not going around doing less so you can do more in the case of, say, caretaking for Holly. You're losing muscle mass and strength while you're there. And so you're not only trying to recover from what happened to you, you are literally suffering by just being there in the bed. And the first time I realized that my friends were telling me things I ignored was when Holly asked me to pick up a 50-pound bag, feed for the animals. And I realized I had to work to lift it up. And so I've dealt with all that. But this is an unpaid suggestion to you folk out there that do not stop walking or exercising or do whatever you do to keep you maintaining yourself, because it's critical. So today, for example, I swam a mile and I'm walking a couple of miles and stuff like that. And, everybody has their own routine, but that's been mine. Somewhere in my mind, I still think I'm that 20-year-old athlete. Okay, so on to the news. What's the news about today? I'm fascinated by one of the characters in this, Ken, and he spells his name Chesebro. Now, if you went through the indictment in Georgia, you saw his name. If you've been following this the way I have, obsessively, and you looked at the January 6th report and so forth, you'd see this guy appearing because he wrote memos. Now, I spelled his name because when he was younger, he was called Cheese, C-H-E-S-E. And then when he got to Harvard Law School, he wanted to be Chesebro, C-H-E-S-E-B-R-O. And that's kind of a tell, I think, in a way. And we all have our vanities, but that's kind of interesting. You could change your name, make your name Snowball. So, Chesebro, I'll give him the name that I think he likes the most. Some are saying Chesebro. So if you hear any of those names, that's who we're talking about. Now, he raises the same question I have with Rudy Giuliani, although I have no connection to this guy. I don't know anything about him, except he was considered a genius, and I'm not saying that facetiously. He was a legal genius, went to Harvard. He worked for a long time up there, sort of made it into a special place to be working for Lawrence Tribe, whom I would have enjoyed working for him too. I could certainly see that. The guy's got a marvelous mind, and he's on the liberal end of the spectrum where I am. And so I would find common ground with him, and apparently so did in real life Chesebro, who I think he worked with him for like 20 years. And so he was involved in these liberal causes for all that time. And then he made a change. He came into some wealth because of some investments. Legitimate, nothing wrong with it. He was spending more time on cases involving conservatives. And it was like he traded the cause. And there's nothing wrong with doing other kinds of work, but he traded the cause for whatever you want me to do. And you can get as lost that way as any other way. And I can't say I always consciously avoided certain cases, but perhaps unconsciously I avoided certain cases. I mean, the most recently, my partner asked me about representing some of those people that were involved in the troubles on the Hill, the insurrection. I said, no way. And he taunted me, what if they offered this? I said, I don't care, I wouldn't do it. I'm not doing any of that. I'm not going to represent traitors. So, and we each have our cases, and some can say, oh, a lawyer's supposed to represent anyone. Yeah, but you have to be committed to it. And for example, if you represent somebody you believe is innocent, but then you find they're guilty, are you going to be able to still represent them? And the answer for most criminal defense lawyers, the subject matter aside, is that you face prosecutions in which the government charges too much and wants disproportionate punishment. So you almost always have those two issues. And not all, but there are some agents and prosecutors who hide the ball. And so you have misconduct. And then there are errors of the law. There's not necessarily bad conduct. So all that mixes in. And I give all of that to Shea Bro, or Ches Bro, or Cheese Bro. Cheese Bro. So there we have kind of the rosy part of his background. Then all of a sudden, he's shifted in his mind from supporting people like Obama and Gore, and now he's with conservative groups and writing things for them, and writing finally for Trump, and introduced these people in a variety of ways. And he writes a memo about how they could attack the last election, and there's almost like a mini law firm formed, and it's Giuliani, Eastman, and Chesebro, or Shebro. And I say that because they confer extensively in the period after the election through January 6th on the memo and the circulation and who gets it and what's the argument and so forth like that. So I think it's a big advance in the investigation. And Shebro, is named in 7 counts in the Georgia prosecution by D.A. Willis. And I found 81 references to his name throughout the document, and 81 references involving different overt acts he did with Giuliani or Republican state leaders, Eastman, and so forth. So you get an idea. Now, for those of you who said, how did I get that number 81? If you're familiar with PDFs, you can search them, and you can put in a prime word, say, and then just have it run and take you to those places where Shebro appears. And I found 81 references in the Georgia thing, just allowing PDF Acrobat to identify how many there were and take me to those pages so I could look at them. So I say this in case you want to investigate this stuff when you download it, and you don't have to be as obsessive as I am. When you download it, you can look it up and see this. Now, this guy had been working for, again, a fairly liberal professor, Lawrence Tribe, and he shared his views. And Elena Kagan and a lot of other notables in the legal panoply of stars worked with and for, and turning with and for Tribe. So that's pretty important. But then, who would have guessed, with this background, that he would write a memo saying that they were going to create electors who would copy legit electors. And the memos are around, and I'm sure we'll see them more and more quoted. You put that together this week with what Stone was doing, and I mean, you see the whole dirty deal that these guys were working. Okay, so I'm interested in all of that as additional things. Our boy Shebro tried to avoid them getting after him, even though he spoke before the January 6th committee, invoking his Fifth a fair amount. I don't hold that against anybody. And he had a place off Central Park South, and he sold that so that nobody could get to him. And he now has apparently a quite comfortable place in Puerto Rico. And the Washington Post has a terrific story analyzing this guy. So if you want more, go to the Washington Post and type in Shea Bro and find it, because it's well written and it's very interesting. But the question it leaves for me is, what happened to this guy? Same question I had about Rudy. Now, the pushback I've gotten from some people after I said, where did it come from? And they didn't put it this bluntly, but the question is, were you paying attention? Now, that's not how it was said to me. It was gentle and polite, because I'm of such a sensitive nature. But what the real question is, you didn't see this, you didn't see that. Now, Rudy, when he came back from Washington, he was a different person. But it wasn't so obvious. All of a sudden he's arresting guys down in Wall Street who, for a phone call, would be in his office immediately, but then you wouldn't have those pictures that you could use to help you run for office. That's the difference between being an ethical prosecutor, in my opinion, and an unethical one. Now, I saw it at the time, but I was still close to knowing him as an assistant and having a fondness for him. But then, he kept having more and more things, and his campaign for mayor, some say, was out and out, biased, racist. And so you gather up these things. When he was the American mayor, he wanted to continue in office without election because what was happening was so significant. So you trail these things along and you say, well, yeah, you didn't see it coming, but you weren't paying attention. It was there. And I suppose there are people who know Shea Bro who found the same thing. And the trick is remembering and seeing these things, but could you anticipate they would result in as extreme charged misconduct as happens here? And I think the answer is we see too much of this. I spoke out ages ago when people like Barr were being considered to become Attorney General. And everybody's bragging about what a great guy he is, even though during the Bush administration, he had gone out of his way to protect Bush, this is Bush the Elder, from what happened in the Iran-Contra affair. And there was an encouragement to pardon certain people that might have arguably led to Bush Sr. And it's interesting how in Washington, but not exclusively, people project a good image of someone, oh, he's experienced this and that, and ignore the stuff that's really material, how basically he gave advice to mislead the nation and to reroute an investigation that might have named Bush Sr. by getting immunity for certain people so they wouldn't talk about him. So people who look at Shea Bro, chest bro, cheese bro, they might say, well, there was nothing like that for him. Well, maybe not, but after analyzing this and having some time to meditate upon it, it does seem to me that the information was there, maybe not of this size and dimension and misconduct, but the information was there that Rudy was on a track that the rest of us were not. And I assume that people will come forward in the days ahead and tell us the same about Shea Bro. So when people talk about lawyers, there are lawyers and then there are people that use their license to cheat and steal. And we can't be misled by those portions of their career in which they were doing good things, because at some point something snapped. And we see public figures like that. Robert Kennedy, okay, different category, but he wrote some amazing stuff about the environment that I read and reread. And now he's this crackpot, really. It's amazing to me. So this happens. When I go off, I want somebody to intervene for me to bring me back. But none of these guys are interested in that. So that's what I got today out here in my cathedral of trees. And I hope and expect I'll talk to you over the weekend too. Bye-bye.